So just looking at it last season, Nick, the two score lines that we had were a win over Brighton at home versus a 2-0 and then a draw at the MX 1-1. What's your memory of those two matches against Brighton?
Well, we have a special memory of the home match because we were there for that one. And I must say, Liam, after the home match, I thought that Brighton looked to be one of the worst sides I'd seen in the Premier League in some time. It was just it's kind of an easy jog for Chelsea in that one. And then as it happened for Chelsea, as we went into January time, everyone got hurt, and we went down to the Amex, and you guys pulled off a shocking draw with an overhead kick from Johan Besh, I think, right? So it was kind of an interesting kind of home and away stretch. How did you feel about those?
Um, Obviously, as you say, the game in September, you quite comfortably sort of steamrolled us, which is interesting because I was there as well and felt like quite a wasted trip come full time. But I think that was one of sort of the earlier Potter games where I wouldn't say we cast results aside per se, but it wasn't perhaps like a huge worry. We'd gone there under Houghton and had been there last season when we lost 3-0 and stuff, and on Boxing Day. So, but we sort of rock up to Chelsea expecting our annual loss. I think the point we got off you was our first in the Premier League when we got it in January. So, we were more pleased than anything to just not have a loss there, to be honest. And as you say, yeah, it was a lovely goal by Johan Bash, who is perhaps not hit the heights that we thought he might hit. But I thought we really held our own against you, and did the same really in pre-season. I think it was last Saturday now, so that I think for us perhaps gives us a bit more confidence as we seem to be a side that we can be quite good at making a run last. In that respect, we've sort of done it to Arsenal across the Premier League, and hopefully we can now build on that again moving forward.
One of my favorite memories of Brighton's last season, the previous season, was Basuma rolling through and laughing at every Arsenal player as they knocked him out of a Champions League spot. Oh man, just chef's kiss. Mwah.
Yes, it was great fun at the Emirates that day.
So, Liam, obviously you made the mention of would Brighton actually end up being a Premier League side and a little bit of that concern. What's your takeaway kind of from last season heading into this one? Where are you at just in terms of how you're feeling heading into this season about the squad that you have and what Potter is going to be able to execute on this season?
Sure. I think Potter would have benefited from a full year in terms of having worked with this squad. He's now been sort of able to cut out some of the players who he would have inherited from Houghton that he might not have wanted, to be fair. He kept sort of a large backbone from Houghton, which he started to get rid of a bit more now, but really sort of bleed through the sort of players he wants in terms of, he's recruited the likes of Mapai and Webster, and is now also looking to bring through some sort of youth players as well. Aaron Connolly, Stephen Alzate are two players who really started to feature last season. Of course, Ben White has been circulated a lot throughout the media in terms of his links to Leeds and other clubs. So be interesting to see, how much does he sort of stick with what he had last season from more sort of a tactical perspective, sort of post lockdown in those last 9 games that we had. It's interesting to see sort of a slight tweak in our style of play, having been renowned for being quite possession heavy. I think in 8 of the games we had less than half the ball. Sat back a lot more against teams, did it against Leicester quite well against Norwich, and got quite a few points. I think we took 12 points from our last 9 games, and gave Liverpool a really good game. I'm not sure if you guys watched that, but we really sort of pushed Liverpool at the Amex. I wouldn't go as far to say unfortunate to lose 3-1, but we could have quite easily on another day had we taken our chances and we came out with a point. So be interesting to see if he opts for sort of the possession approach that we saw last season, which is something that us Brighton fans still don't know, even from pre-season.
The one name that you brought up there that I think is interesting, and another that I think you mentioned actually in one of your articles talking about the season ahead. So Ben White coming back, is he someone that you see kind of jumping into the defensive pairing? And then another one in Lallana coming off a free could be a really shrewd piece of business for the club. How are you feeling about some of the incomings and the additions that have been made?
I'm delighted to see the level of competition primarily, and even more important than that, to be honest with you, to see our academy really start to produce some quality players is really nice. They've had back-to-back third place finishes now in the Premier League 2 in the top youth division when they got promoted in 17-18, and they've been exceptional to watch them play. So to see some of the players come through is also really nice, I think, and not just to have success from like a trophy perspective. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does with Ben White because he's featured heavily in pre-season. But then obviously Dan Burn was someone last season who we were quite rightly heavily reliant on, as someone who was a centre back and sort of got shoehorned out to left back, looked really good, put up some really good numbers in terms of sort of his ball progression. And of course, being 6'7" offers us a great aerial threat from both set pieces, where I think we were quite good last season, and even from goal kicks. I think if you look at our sort of goal kick chart from last season, either the goal kicks were short into our centre backs in the box, just like Chelsea do, or they were just sort of pinged out wide left and saying, Dan Burn's there somewhere. We'll try and find him. So Ben White, yeah, I would expect to see him start purely because of the desire Potter's shown in his plans to keep him. And as you said with Lallana, a free signing who obviously will cost a fair bit with his wages, but shows where we've actually developed to as a club, to be able to bring in someone of his quality. Not quite got the minutes in his legs in the past few seasons, so whether we can get a full season out of him is probably the biggest challenge, which is quite unique, I suppose, for most players. But he's got someone who an England international, a seasoned Premier League player, it's probably got more benefits than sort of drawbacks. So yeah, but both could be real quality players.
So kind of hearing that, Nick, I think on the flip side, we've done a fair bit of business to be told. Liam, just from thinking about that, where you look at what Chelsea has done, because you mentioned a little bit about like the youth academy and bringing players through. That was like the Chelsea story of last season. The story of this season is apparently we've bought the Premier League, which okay, sure, whatever. What's your take on this Chelsea versus maybe the Chelsea you saw last season? Obviously, we're going to be without a couple of players just due to injury or kind of registration issues. But what's your take on what you're going to see this season versus last season?
Last season, to be fair, I was delighted to see sort of all the youth players come through. As something individually that I'd looked into a bit more through university and stuff. It was quite interesting to see. With a lot of players coming from sort of the South London area, and players who were genuine academy players as well, in the sense that, and some people might not realise, but when people say academy players can join at 13, 14 and be poached from clubs and go through as academy graduates. But the likes of Abraham and Mount, I believe, have been there since they were sort of 6 and 7. So these are players who, before they'd kicked the ball for Chelsea's senior side, had over a decade at the club, which I think many people sort of don't realise when players break through. So I think from your guys' perspective, that must have been nice to see, sort of the fruition of that. And again, Lampard has used, the embargo being lifted, he's sort of gone and really splashed the cash. But, the sort of players that Chelsea have picked up are, some real quality players who are very worried about us having to defend against, and sort of the one saving grace that what we talked about on the pages, potentially we might be playing you at the best time when you haven't had 5-6 months to gel. You haven't got a lot of time with this squad to get them embedded. So maybe this is perhaps the best time to play. Obviously, Monday and time will tell. I could be completely wrong. We might get battered 5-0 anyway. But this could be the perfect time to play them. And as you say, you have a few players missing, but on balance, some exceptional signings, some exceptional creators as well, who, not that Chelsea were in need of creators as far as I'm concerned, but and to think that you've then prevented perhaps the likes of Liverpool and other big sides from strengthening, it is even better for you guys, I suppose.
Yeah, that's not the worst part about it, for sure. I think when you look at our squad and how it's potentially shaping up this year, like there are still some outgoings that will happen over the next few weeks, but all in all, there were pretty clearly identified areas of need as we entered into the season. It will be interesting, of all the signings that we've made so far, I think Thiago Silva will be the most interesting to me to see how he has an impact on the squad or not, depending on if he can get up to speed in the Premier League. My money would be on that he figures it out and could provide some stability and leadership that I think our backline desperately needs. So that's the one eventually when he gets involved, and I don't think that will be this week, by the way. So you just missed out on him. But I think when he gets involved, it'll really solidify and strengthen the team.